Albion Online is a free-to-play, full-loop PvP MMORPG created by Sandbox Interactive. This game was released on July 17th, 2017, and from what I can tell, the game had an extremely rough launch. But Albion recovered after the initial launch headaches and has grown into a great game of its own. I did a review on Albion back at the beginning of this year, but I had the pleasure of doing some sponsored streaming content with their latest Into the Fray update over on my Twitch channel, so I thought I would make a video update to share my latest thoughts on the game. Some have changed, but a lot has stayed the same. As with all of my Is It Worth Playing videos, we're going to do a short about and then cover the pros, cons, and some gray area points. Now, like I said, guys, Albion is a full loop PvP MMORPG with a classless system, with the abilities and passives of your character being determined by the weapons and armor pieces that you have equipped. The game is completely sandbox in nature as well. After the initial tutorial, which does have some quests to help you get started, you're essentially just dropped off in a town of your choice and then essentially set free to do as you please. The game does not have any traditional questing or leveling, so the power of your character will be determined by the gear that you're wearing and your character's proficiency with that gear. The more you use certain gear pieces, your effectiveness with that gear increases as you gain specialization, giving you some extra power and a sense of long-term progression. Even learning weapons and armor types of like the same category will make you effective with other weapons and armor that come from the same category, so you are incentivized to work on different pieces of gear again for that long-term progression. The extra power that you gain is grinded up through grinding fame, which is essentially this game's version of experience and is gained in an extremely wide variety of ways in the game. The game also has a fully player-driven economy, with all equipment and items being made by other players. The game also does have guilds, which play a very big role in the game, and a type of player housing known as islands, but they serve more of a functional purpose rather than a cosmetic one, and they also allow you to build certain crafting tables and other buildings on your island. You can also have guild houses and hideouts serving as a base of operations for your guild. The game has an extremely wide variety of PvP content, from 5v5 ranked arena to faction-based PvP with big ZVZ fights to capture outposts to 1v1 PvP VE game modes known as corrupted dungeons, a similar type of mode that can be 2v2, 5v5, or 10v10 known as Hellgates, a ranked type PvP that happens at certain times known as the Crystal League, Roads of Avalon PvP, which provides an open world PvP VE small scale environment, guild v guild fights, and much more. The game also, even though it's a PvP first game, does have some solid PvE content with hardcore expeditions, group dungeons, and dungeons that you can spawn known as Avalonian dungeons, which are a bit harder than the group dungeons. The game's world is also broken into a wide variety of biomes, and within those biomes are zones that have different tiers and colors. The tier of the zone refers to the level and difficulty of the mobs present in the zone. As you gain more fame and level up certain passives, you will be able to more easily take on these higher level mobs. In addition, the color of the zone refers to the PvP rules of said zone. Blue and yellow zones are not full loot PvP, where if you die, you simply do get downed. However, PvP is totally disabled in blue zones, but enabled in yellow zones. Red and black zones are where full loot PvP is enabled. In addition, red, blue, and yellow zones require you to actually flag to attack enemy players, and you will lose reputation for killing non-flagged players, which can then be re-earned by grinding mobs. In the black zones, however, everyone is flagged automatically for PvP, so no rep can be lost. With games like this, the more risk you put yourself at, though, the higher the reward. So typically, red and especially black zones are going to be where your best loot is. In terms of the payment model, Albion does have a premium membership that gives you some extra perks and bonuses, but otherwise it is free to play. In addition, you can also buy cosmetics in their microtransaction shop, but there is no lack of skins to be purchased with in-game silver through the auction house. While silver is also the in-game currency that is generated through player interactions, dropped by mobs, and used to do all the trading in Albion, you can buy gold from the MX store. This can be used to buy certain character customization, cosmetics, or exchange for in-game silver, which some people may see this as an issue of spending silver to buy high-tier equipment, but do remember that this is a full loot game. The second that you die in a red or black zone, all that gear that you just bought is lost forever, and since the probability of you never dying in this game is very close to zero, I do not see this happening. I don't see this personally as too much of an issue. Also, one of the great things that you can actually use your silver to purchase premium. So if you do generate enough money, very similarly to how like bonds work in old school RuneScape, you can use your generated in-game silver to actually buy premium. So if you do make enough money every month, you do not actually have to pay real money for your subscription. Now, guys, starting off with my pros for the game, the first thing that I have is enjoyable progression. I really like the whole specialization concept in Albion Online. I find it to be really good with the ability to just, as you use more equipment and kind of get dedicated to a certain build type, you actually get better with that gear and are able to have like lower tier gear be stronger. So let's say a certain tier of gear only gives you 100 power, but if you're really specialized with a piece of gear, that same, tier 4 item that gives you 100 power, would instead give you 120 power or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So the more you use it, the better you get with it. And you also gain extra power for using items of the same type. So you get more experience with certain cloth hoods by using other cloth hoods, because again, you're more experienced with just cloth hoods overall. So it gives you, again, a good sense of progression and a reason to try and use different things in the game. Another thing that I do like, and this is something that I can't say about many MMOs, is that the tutorial is actually very good. I remember that when I left the Albion Online tutorial, of course, right, there was still plenty I needed to learn and understand, and there's still plenty I need to learn and understand nowadays, but I felt relatively prepared to go out into the world and kind of get started with things from the tutorial. And again, I feel like that's not very common with many MMOs nowadays. So I give Albion and Sandbox Interactive a lot of credit here for actually making a very solid tutorial. The world also feels very dynamic with mob scaling. Again, many MMOs nowadays, the open world and overland content is frankly a joke, and it is extremely easy. However, the way that the world works in Albion, and this came out with the Lands Awaken update at the end of 2021, is that if certain mobs are left alive for a long time, they get stronger and stronger and stronger over time, making them a lot harder to kill. And trust me, they can be a challenge. There have been open world mobs that I've tried to kill that I had to give up because they were too powerful and too challenging. But if you do take these mobs down, these monsters down in the open world, you can get hundreds of thousands of fame for actually killing these big monsters, and again, it allows you to progress faster. So it makes the open world feel very dynamic. You get excited when you see those big mobs, because like, man, if I get a kill here, I'm gonna get so much experience. And then you also have the extra concern of like, I gotta make sure no one's going to attack me while I'm doing this, because gotta worry about PvP. The threat's always looming if you're in a red or black zone. So it just adds for a really cool element to a game like Albion. Another good thing that I have is that there are people everywhere. The first thing that people always say who have never seen Albion whenever I stream it is, oh my god, there are so many people. Because one of the things about Albion is that there is only one server for the entire game, which I will cover a little bit more in my con section, but there's only one server for the entire game. So everyone, whether you're EU, NA, OCE, doesn't matter, we're all on one server. And so there's a lot of people in all of the towns, and it truly feels like an MMORPG while you are playing it, because there are just people all over the place. Now, there's always feels like there's something to do in Albion as well. There's a massive variety of unique content. Albion's got a lot of content that other games don't have, such as, those corrupted dungeons and hell gates. And you can just log in, and the beauty of the sandbox, which I'm personally a giant fan of, is you can just do whatever you want. You can log in every day and you can go, all right, I want to do dungeon maps and Roads of Avalon today. Oh, maybe I just want to queue arena all day. Maybe I'll, PvP with some friends and do some hell gates. Oh, maybe only my one friend is on. We'll do 2v2 hell gates. Let me try to make a team for Crystal League. Like, there's just so much that you can do. GVG stuff. There's I can gather, craft. There's no shortage of content in the game, and you will always find something to do. I also think that Albion has one of the best auction house user interfaces of any MMO I've used. I think it is great. You have a lot of data jammed into one into like the base auction house function. There are no add-ons in the game, but I don't really feel like I ever need any, because again, the base UI for the auction house has a lot baked in. I do wish you could set like an automatic like undercut thing, because like when you're listing a lot of items, it can be annoying to click the item, sell order, -2 list, sell order -2 list. I wish you could set like okay, I want to, whenever I list an item, I want to undercut it by X number of silver. Would make listing items significantly faster. But overall, like besides that, the user interface for the auction house is great and makes a game like this way better to play. Speaking of which, the loadout system for the game is fantastic. One of the biggest issues that comes with full loot PvP MMORPGs is the moment after you die, gearing back up, going back and trying to reclaim all of your gear. In my opinion, also full loot MMOs that cause you to drop your silver or your gold, I think is a really terrible idea, but that does not happen in Albion. You simply just drop your gear or whatever in your bags, but your silver, obviously, you still get to keep. But with the loadout system, you can actually save build profiles so that what you can do is that if you do die, you can run to the auction house, click the build tab, search for your build profile, click buy and equip, and just like that, you are good to go. So gearing back up literally takes seconds. It's very nice. Buildcraft is also off the charts. It's a classless system, and so you can change builds easily. And for me, as somebody who's really into build crafting in MMOs, I have had like the most alt-itis in this game ever, because there's just so many different builds and so much that you can try. There are hundreds of weapons, hundreds of gear options, and so the amount of theory crafting and build crafting that is in the game is crazy. And if you are into buildcraft, if you like to try to, create character builds and character setups, you will have a field day with this game. Also, within each individual weapon, you have choices for your different skills, choices for your passives, the same thing on each gear piece. So there is a lot that you can do to customize and personalize your character to make a build of your own. Albion is also the most fun with groups. So if you have a group of friends or you meet a guild in game, you are going to have peak fun with Albion Online. So again, if you are, I've know a lot of people who, they're like, oh, me and my friends are looking for a game to play. And there are other games that maybe aren't as rewarding, or, the group content's further away. But Albion is, in my opinion, best played with a group, and you can hop into the action very, very quickly. Also, the music in the game is top notch. I feel like music is one of those things where when it's really bad, it's very noticeable, and you can talk about how bad it is, but when it's good, it's just kind of something that's there and you just, don't really think about it. But I don't know, there was something with me when I started playing the game. The music for the different biomes, the areas that you're in, it feels really perfect and really tailored to the individual area that you're in. Personally, the Martlock theme song is the GOAT. It is so good. It's the reason I play in Martlock, because the music for the town is amazing. And I just think that the audio team did a fantastic job with the music in the game, and is something that I did just want to highlight here in my pro section. Something else that I like, being that this is a full loot PvP game, is that there are a variety of area types based on your comfort with full loot PvP. Not everybody's ready to hop into the black zone 5 seconds after creating a character. They kind of want to work into it. And my biggest issue with full loot PvP games in the past is that there's no way to practice. You go out, you try to fight someone, you die, you lose all your shit, and you're like, well, I don't know what to do because I'm new and I'm trying to learn. But the great thing about Albion is that you have the blue and yellow zones, you have the yellow zone as well as the arena that you can queue that is not full loot. The ranked arena, to be able to practice. You can, fight people in the yellow zones. You can do a yellow zone corrupted dungeon, so that if you can do that 1v1 content, but if you die, you don't lose your stuff. Same thing with the Hellgates, with the arena. There's plenty of non-full loot PvP in the game that you can engage in to practice, get comfortable with your builds, comfortable with the game, and then when you are ready, you can venture out into that full loot PvP stuff and start getting into that. And so I really like that about Albion. I also do think that the game, from what I've experienced so far, has very minimal bugs or performance issues, which is amazing. I've been told that was not always the case, that especially, you can get to some giant ZVZ fights with hundreds and hundreds of players on the screen. And in the past, I have been told that the performance was extremely bad with that. But at least nowadays, it seems to have been greatly improved, and I have gotten into some very giant Zerg v Zerg fights, and my game handled it like a champ. So, and I've run into very minimal bugs, maybe one or two very minor things while playing, but overall, the game is very well optimized and will perform well on a variety of devices. I will say, though, I have noticed that there are some performance issues, like on my phone, but my phone also isn't the newest, so I think it could just be an issue on my end. But just be aware that the mobile client may have some freezing and glitching if you do play it, but that's generally not as present on PC. Also, I think the payment model of the game is great. I think, just having simply the Sub if you would like to buy it is really, really good. The game's free to play to get into and try. You can sub if you want to. Cosmetic only microtransaction shop, but you can still buy stuff off of the in-game silver market, and you can also buy your premium with silver if you want to. So it's an extremely friendly consumer model, which is something I appreciate, especially in today's gaming landscape. The game is also a PvP focused game that has meaningful PvE content. I think something that people may not realize when it comes to PvP MMOs is that a lot of times the PvE content gets left behind, and I do think that even with PvP MMOs, having meaningful and fun PvE content is important, because PvPvE is amazing. You get some really cool interactions that can happen when you have the monsters that you're trying to fight, other players. It leads to cool experiences. And also the PvE content, you get something to do in between your PvP interactions, especially, which is good for an MMO. So I think that they have a really good balance. The PvE content also has enough challenge to it that you feel like you feel good doing it. You feel good when you kill bosses and stuff, you know, so it is enjoyable. I also do like how you start PvPing fast. The first time I played, I was hopping into Black Zone PvP 3 hours after I started playing Albion. You can just simply get right into it, which is super cool. The game also does have a mobile client, which is super helpful. I don't really do anything too intense on my phone. I personally will maybe just farm some stuff or just do a little bit of gathering, check the auction house or whatever. But I think it's cool to have the ability to play the game on your phone. Now, also, I do personally feel that Albion has the perfect sweet spot for full loot PvP. You feel really rewarded for killing someone, but not devastated when you drop all of your stuff when you die, and re-gearing and getting back into the fight thanks to the loadout system is very fast. Certain games, like I've mentioned earlier, you feel really bad when you die, just with the way that the items are dropped. Sometimes it's you drop your gold to you can't PvP with certain levels of item unless you have like a certain level of item, but then if you have it, it's really expensive. So then if you do die, you just get set back a lot, and it just a lot of times in many full loot PvP games, you feel punished when you die. But again, one of the great things about Albion is that you can actually find a lot of success in PvP with relatively cheap gear. And making silver nowadays, you make silver, which is again the end game currency, way faster than it outpaces the money you'd spend on gear. Like, I have somebody who watches my stream who he PvPs in a setup that is worth maybe 50,000 silver. And the other day when we were playing together, we made 1 million silver in a very short period of time, just kind of doing some dungeons and stuff. Now, with his setup only being worth 50k, with that 1 million silver, he could buy it 20 times over. If you also consider the fact that if he makes no other money during that time, he can buy it 20 times over. Now, obviously, there are builds that are going to be more expensive, but you use those once you have a lot bigger of a silver reservoir. It's all relative. So that's one great thing about the game. You feel very happy when you get people, when you kill someone and get their gear, because you can sell it and make a lot of money, but you're not devastated when you die because replacing your gear is easy enough. The crafting system in the game is also really, really good. It has enough depth to keep you engaged, but is extremely easy to get started with and understand. I feel one of the biggest issues with crafting in many MMOs nowadays is that companies will confuse complexity with depth, but that is not an issue that Albion has. The crafting, again, like I said, it's got enough depth to keep you engaged, but it is easy enough that as someone who's you're just learning the game, you can learn it and pick it up without having to look at 77 guides. Okay, I've played other full loot MMOs where I feel like you need a PhD to understand their crafting system, but Albion's is actually very, very friendly to get into. Now, there's also 4 new pros that I would like to mention that just came with the new Into the Fray update. Their new Journey Back ability is amazing. If you go mount up on your mount, you will have a new ability that is called Journey Back, and you are basically using your horse, will channel for 15 seconds, and then you would teleport back to the last town that you were in. This makes it a lot easier to, if you get a nice, pile of loot, to try to get it back and sell it without getting, gate ganked by a bunch of players. Used to be what a lot of people do. They would sit on the gates of the towns, gank people as they're trying to come back, and so it would be a nightmare trying to get your stuff back to town. But the new Journey Back ability does remove that, which is super cool. However, it can be disabled if you do certain things, like if you do bank in an outlaw bank, which is like a random bank out in the world, if you trade with other players, etc. So, if you just go out there and farm stuff on your own and then use Journey Back, you can go back. But if you're trying to, store stuff or trade things with other people, you are going to have to find a way to get back to town on your own. I think the ability has a very good balance, between usability, yet it has enough limitations on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like it's in a really solid sweet spot where, again, it feels good a lot to use a lot, but it has enough limitations where you do feel challenged, where it's like, okay, you know, I stored my stuff here, now I need to find a way to bring it back and not die on the way there, which I think is really cool. Another thing that they also have is the portal towns. So they're an extension of the cities that come from the main continent. So there's a main continent that has all of the blue, yellow, and red zones, as well as the main royal cities. And then the big continent to the north that has all of the black zones. And now they have extensions of the towns over in the black zone, so you're able to just easily have all of the stuff out there. It shares the same auction house, the same bank as your initial royal city, and it has a bunch of other stuff that you need out there, so you can really easily just get into PvP, and you don't have to constantly waste time instancing, loading in, loading out, portaling here, portaling there. It just makes it way easier to, again, jump right into the combat. They also added a new way to automatically pick up silver. You used to have to click every silver pile individually, and it was a pain in the butt, so I'm glad that they did add an auto silver pickup. They also did add a new ranked PvP mode, which is a lot of fun, but you know, it does of course have your normal PvP woes where you're playing with people who it's like, how are they even using a computer? But for the most part, it is a good time. I do like that the game has a ranked PvP, so again, if you want to do some instance content, break it up with what you're doing. It gives you a form of low risk PvP that again has a sense of progression through the rankings, and it's a good way to just learn and play the game. Now, some of my gray area points that I do have for Albion is going to be the graphics. The graphics are not going to be for everybody. Personally, I don't mind them. I view them as an artistic choice. But again, some people don't like the lower res, more cartoony graphics. So that's kind of a decision you have to make yourself. Personally, I don't mind. I've played plenty of games with really high, crazy graphics that absolutely suck. And to me, you know, as long as I like and don't mind a game's artistic style, I focus more on the gameplay myself, but, you know, that's going to vary from person to person. Again, the combat also might not be for everybody. Gameplay's a lot like League of Legends. You only have, you know, 6 abilities and 2 consumables, and it's click to move. So for many people who don't like that style of combat or the top-down view, Albion might not be for you. But again, something you need to think about. The game also does have non-consensual PvP. Again, some people might not like that, and you're not going to get the full experience out of the game only sticking to the blue and yellow zones. So it is something you do need to consider. You know, even if you're going to be a gatherer, the highest tier of gathering items are in the black zone. You can make builds if you want to that are all focused around escaping and being as tanky as possible, which again to me adds an element of excitement to the game. But again, that is just my opinion. Your mileage may vary. The game also does have no quest or story content just due to being a purely sandbox PvP MMO. So again, if you are looking for that kind of experience, Albion will not have it for you. But if you do not mind or care like me, then, you know, you should be able to move past that. Now, although the game has a lot of pros, I know my pros list for Albion was extremely long. The game does have some cons, of course, like every game does. My first con is that there is no hotkey for targeting your nearest enemy. You always have to click. Sometimes when I am playing, moving around and stuff, I just feel like it could be really useful to have a way to just target my nearest enemy without having to specifically click on them. It could also be really difficult if there's like a lot of people on the screen trying to click on specific targets or players, and just the ability to actually target my closest enemy with a click of a key would be a lot easier. Now, while the grouping UI in the game has gotten better, it still does lack some key information, and I still think it could use some more improvements. I think the biggest issue that I have with the group UI is that you can't see where your group mates are unless they're on the same like map instance. I don't know if that's totally intended. It probably is, but to me, I think it would be really nice to be able to hover over like an individual's name in the group and see where they're located, or if I click on a different like map, like if I'm in one zone and then go to my map and click on a different zone, see if a group member is there. I just feel like it'd be a lot easier kind of track where your group mates are at a glance. I know this would be super useful, especially for like the faction warfare, and so it's something that I would really like to see added to the game personally, and something that I do think is currently missing from the grouping UI. One of my other cons is that there is also only one server, which depending on where your location is can cause some ping issues. From what I've been told, overall, even though if you do have a little bit higher ping, it isn't the end of the world. You just maybe want to avoid certain builds, but it is just definitely something to consider depending on where you are located, because the server for Albion is located in the East Coast USA. But like I said, I do know people who do play from EU and other countries around there and still say that even though they have slightly higher ping, it doesn't feel overly limiting when they play the game. But again, it's just something to consider. Another con that I have, and I don't know if this is just something that I personally am missing, but islands kind of feel useless outside of just using it for storage. I think they're really great in concept, but based on what I could tell from silver per hour on your house versus crafting, it just seems a bit over nerfed. I could be wrong on this point, but like I said, based off what I've discussed with my Twitch chat and what they've told me and what I've done for my own research, it doesn't seem as worth touching your island as it used to be and using it and just investing all the money into it. But this point could be simply fixed with a balance patch. Also, I think adding more cosmetic things, which I know they do have some, but if they're going to lower the overall functionality of the islands, I feel leaning a little bit more heavily into cosmetics could work really, really well and make the island something more personal for the individual player. I also do think that solo content in the game does overall need to be improved. They have an upcoming update called Mists of Avalon, which should help with that, which is basically that Roads of Avalon stuff that I discussed earlier, that small scale PvPvE. It's going to be a single player version of that, a 1v1, it's basically a solo open world type of experience, right? But right now, when you play Albion, you are not getting the full experience unless you join a big guild. And there are some times that people just log in and they just kind of want to chill and play alone, or maybe they're newer and still, not ready to join a guild yet. They kind of want to try out the game, but you are really hamstringing yourself not being in a big guild. So it is something that I would like to see continually iterated on and improved, with making the game a bit better for if you do want to play in either by yourself or with a very small group. Obviously I'm not saying the game should just nerf big group content, blah blah blah. If I get that's what they want to focus on, but again, I just think making a better experience for those who do want to play solo or in a very small group, I think would be better, because it opens up more lines and more avenues of play. Another con that I have is that the game does have a very slight desync. Something that I've noticed there are plenty of times where I'm, trying to dodge, the enemy's attacks, boss attacks, and I swear my character is out of the AoE, but I still manage to get hit. So it is just something to keep in mind, that the game does definitely have a very slight desync to it. Also, leveling your gathering in this game is slow, very slow. It is a grind. And I just think they could definitely make it a little bit faster. Not anything super crazy, but it just right now it feels glacial to try to level your gathering. It is just something I've noticed from trying to do it myself versus leveling other crafting professions. So I think increasing maybe how much fame certain gathering gives you would make it a lot easier to just be able to level it up. I'm not saying it needs to be lightning fast, but at the current moment, it does feel a little bit slow to me personally. And then my final con is going to be locking to the alliance gates. So if you do, decide you are a Martlock gamer and you decide to go to the Martlock outpost town, you are locked to only going through Martlock for a period of time, which I don't really understand why. I don't know if there is a reason to this that I personally am not seeing, but it's come up as an issue a couple of times for me when I'm trying to play with friends and they're locked to Fort Sterling and I'm locked to Martlock, and we go, oh crap, we can't go out one of either gate, so we have to try to find a Road of Avalon to go out through, which again isn't the end of the world, but I don't know, it just seems like the alliance gate locking is a bit unnecessary. I don't see what purpose it serves, and I don't know if there's a reason for it, but I just feel like it's an unnecessary limitation that just kind of adds, friction to the game for the sake of adding friction. But with all of those cons being said, guys, I have to say that of all the MMOs that I've tested and tried over the last couple of years, Albion is easily one of my favorites. The game is incredibly fun to play, there's plenty to do in-game, and it's one of the very few PvP first MMOs that isn't just bad like so many of them are. And so if you've been looking for a new MMO to try and are a big fan of PvP, I highly, highly recommend checking this game out. The game is growing in popularity a lot, and it seems that the game is improving a ton with every update, and I think it is a good time to give Albion a try. Now, what do you guys think? Do you play Albion? Have you tried it before? Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. And if you guys do decide to give the game a try, I do have an referral link, which I will link in the description below, where that's a way for you guys to kind of support me if you do decide to give the game a try. I do get some extra in-game perks and stuff. So I would appreciate if you guys check that out. But Guys, I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it educational and useful about getting into Albion Online. If you liked the video, really appreciate if you left a like on it. Any questions about the game, feel free to leave a comment below. And guys, subscribe for more MMORPG content and beginner guides. Appreciate y'all stopping by today. Thank you very much. As always, I'm Dots Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next video.